Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health Mental Health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I would love to get your thoughts. If you did not get in yesterday with your thoughts on the Broncos' latest triumph, I welcome you. If you have more to say regarding the Denver Broncos, I am here for that, as well as your comments on any of the day's topics. You can call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. I will get to the Broncos in short order because we have an all-out fight here for the top seed in the AFC after the Patriots win last night. But I want to start with the Denver Nuggets because what they are going through right now is the first crisis of David Adelman's tenure. And I said in the offseason, after Ben Tenzer and John Wallace pulled off the series of deals they pulled off to put together the roster that I think Michael Malone had long been begging for, but the Nuggets have needed for the last couple of years as they have seen more talent leave their building than come into their building. They got the depth. They got the financial flexibility, all of this kind of stuff. I said at that moment, the pressure shifted to David Adelman. I don't know what is going to change between now and the end of the season where you're going to say, oh, the Nuggets front office messed up. Like, that's how good it was up until the recent stretch of home games that I'm about to discuss. But the thought is that from a roster perspective, the Nuggets are about as good as they can be. I have a hard time at this point envisioning something that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace do or do not do between now and the end of the season where I would say if the Nuggets fall short of expectation, oh, it's on them. They messed up. No, they did their job. They did their job. Now, if the Nuggets fall short of expectation, it's going to be on David Adelman, and there are going to be people wondering whether the Nuggets were a bit hasty in just removing the interim tag from David Adelman. Those questions are going to be asked. Now, I think David Adelman, the way that the Nuggets responded to him after Michael Malone was fired, showed me that he was a good choice. But he needs to find a way for this Nuggets team to respond to him now. Last night, they lost their fourth straight home game. They lost to the Dallas Mavericks, who I don't know if you've noticed, the Dallas Mavericks have fallen on some hard times of late. They're not in a great spot. Yet they came into Denver and not only beat the Denver Nuggets, they beat them by putting up 131 points. The Nuggets have lost 4 consecutive home games. When's the last time that we can say that? And the teams they are losing to, the Chicago Bulls, the Sacramento Kings, the San Antonio Spurs without Victor Wembanyama, and the Dallas Mavericks without Luka Doncic, just in case you're a little bit late to the party. It's not like they're losing to OKC and Houston and the Boston Celtics fully healthy here. These are some of Not San Antonio, but San Antonio was shorthanded. They're losing to some of the worst teams in basketball. Specifically, Sacramento and Dallas are awful. Awful teams. And the Denver Nuggets are losing on their home floor to these teams. Here's where it starts. The injuries that the Nuggets have sustained, and now Jamal Murray leaves last night's game with an ankle injury, and we wait with bated breath on the prognosis for him. But prior to that, they lost Christian Brown and they lost Aaron Gordon. And Aaron Gordon specifically is who you have to look at. The metaphorical heart of the Denver Nuggets was ripped out of them with Aaron Gordon being gone. And this team right now lacks a little bit of heart. In addition to defense and other things that Aaron Gordon brings to the table. So yes, it starts with the injuries. But look around the NBA. There is an epidemic of injuries in the NBA right now. The Nuggets are not more adversely affected than anybody else. Okay, but you have to acknowledge that that's part of the reason why the Nuggets are struggling, especially on the defensive end right now, is because they don't have Aaron Gordon. And I'm just glad that if there is a silver lining in all of this, that we can put to rest the idea that somehow Peyton Watson can be a fill-in for Aaron Gordon long-term, that can be a thing. It cannot be. But it starts there. Okay? And when you are without your best defender and maybe your second best defender, your defense is going to suffer. And I thought Chris Dempsey on Altitude last night pointed out very well, and it's a salient point that needs to be brought up. I understand that these teams are not world beaters. In fact, at least half of them are not going to make the playoffs. And they play an up-tempo style that's really testing the Broncos, the Nuggets defense right now. Okay? So there are these matchups that are not helping things out. Younger teams, high, fast-paced teams. I understand that. And David Adelman last night talked about what is missing most from his team's defense right now.
We're not physical enough right now. And I think the stat that'll reach, kind of stands out to me is only 11 personal fouls. That says you're not putting your hands on people and they're running free.
And that's a problem. The Nuggets need to be more physical with these teams, slow them down, keep them in the half court, and they'll have a better chance. So that's also part of the reason here. But there's another layer to this. That is, this team looks disinterested at times. Or to put it another way, they're letting go of the rope a little bit. They were up by 17 in that game and lost. And this is something that very sharp eyes have pointed out over the previous few weeks, that the Nuggets, especially closing out games, don't look great. But because their offense has been so overwhelmingly good, led by Nikola Jokic, or they're up by so much, it doesn't ultimately end up impacting the outcome. But there were some warning signs that this Nuggets team was losing interest or letting go of the rope, even in games that they were winning. and now it's costing them. They're up by 17 against a bad Dallas Mavericks team. You should have closed that team out. If you had just stayed locked in, you probably would have won that game. So these are very real things that happen to NBA teams that the Nuggets are dealing with right now. Injuries, matchups, and losing interest. As much as you hate to say it, it happens to almost everybody in the NBA. You lose, it's a long season. You get disinterested at times. So those are the reasons. But whose plate do they all fall on to fix? David Adelman's. Under previous leadership, probably about 2 home games ago, you would have gotten one of those epic Michael Malone calling out his team rants in the postgame. I theorize it would have been the Spurs game. You played on Monday. The schedule had been a little bit rough, which is many people are thinking is leading to all these injuries we're seeing across the NBA. But they play a game against Memphis, and they get all the way until Friday to play a home game against an undermanned San Antonio team. They lose that game and give up. What did they give up in that one? 139 points. Michael Malone would have ripped into the Denver Nuggets after that game, if not sooner. Michael Malone was pretty good about launching a preemptive strike. Even in a win, we could have heard Michael Malone call out his team. And it's fine that David Adelman doesn't do that. Right? Part of Michael Malone's personality was what got him fired. So I'm not asking David Adelman to be Michael Malone. But what the Nuggets clearly need right now is they need whatever that looks like for David Adelman, whatever it is that David Adelman does to get his team to lock back in and beat these teams that they should be blowing out. I'm not saying you got to win by 30 when you don't have Brown and Gordon and now Murray. But you got to find, that's my thing. Not one of these games are the Nuggets figuring out a way to win. You can explain each one of these away in a vacuum. Right? And I mentioned it the other day, coming off the high of beating Houston, how difficult of a game that was, coming back off of spending a long time on the road. You came back, second night of a back-to-back against a young and hungry Sacramento Kings team led by someone on a revenge tour in Russell Westbrook, and you got caught. Okay, I can explain that one away to an extent. I can talk about the Bulls in that they're not a great team, but they're better than you may remember this team. Like, I could explain each one of these games by itself, but we're looking at 4 home games, all matchups that the Nuggets should win, and they're not. So it's all of them together. It's not just the Dallas game. It's not just the San Antonio game or the Chicago game or the Sacramento game. It's all of these together that the Nuggets have not figured out a way, be it game plan, personnel, rotations, effort, energy, strategy, whatever it might be. They haven't figured out one thing to switch to come out on top in one of these games, just to stem the tide. But they haven't. And it falls on David Adelman to figure out what that is. He seems to me like not as much of a rah-rah guy as he is somebody that will go in and adjust something tactically to help the Denver Nuggets. If that's what it is, that's fine. We just got to see it. Like, do it already. Whatever it is. We're not asking you to be Michael Malone and calling out your team. If that's not your style, it comes off disingenuous and does more harm than good. But whatever it is that David Adelman does to stem the tide, to turn things around, to get his players to lock in, whatever it is, he's got to do it. Because now the Nuggets are going on, and again, they're not playing elite teams in the NBA coming up on this road trip, but it's a 4-game road trip. And then they come back and they have Houston in 2 of the next 3 games. They have Orlando. The schedule isn't, especially with the fact that we're talking about the Nuggets losing to Sacramento, Chicago, undermanned San Antonio, and Dallas at home. 4 games in the Eastern United States, and then 2 of your first 3 home games back against Houston. It doesn't seem like the schedule is letting up right now for the Denver Nuggets. But this is, and this is not panic. This is not forget everything you saw for however many games to start the season. This is just saying every now and again, and Michael Malone dealt with this, every now and again, you go through a really rough stretch. A lot of contributing factors. It is on you as a head coach to change something to turn it, to stop the bleeding. And that's what David Adelman's task is. And I thought maybe last night would be the night. The Nuggets are up by 17, looking good. And then they squandered it all away yet again. So there were no expectations on David Adelman when he initially took over for Michael Malone. And the start of this season was terrific for the Denver Nuggets. This is the first bit of adversity they've gone through. Injuries, tough schedule, losing. Let's see how a David Adelman-led team responds. But they need to respond soon. Because already losing 4 home games in a row, to say nothing of the quality of opponent, is, for the modern Denver Nuggets, completely unacceptable. For the last half a decade or so, you can't probably name 4 teams in the NBA that are better than the Denver Nuggets. And if you lined all of them up in one stretch, it would still be unacceptable for the Denver Nuggets to lose to all 4 of them at home. And they're losing to Chicago, Dallas, San Antonio, Sacramento, Chicago. Can't happen. It's on the players, for sure, but it's part of the job description of a head coach. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts on the Nuggets' recent slide. But one guy that's somewhat immune to that is Nikola Jokic. He had another monster game, a bigger picture discussion coming up about him and his place in the basketball world. But coming up next, Patriots not doing the Broncos any favors and letting up for that top overall seed. Ultimately, who does end up getting home field through the AFC playoffs? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Well, it looks like home field advantage in the AFC is going to come down to the very end as the New England Patriots last night make light work of the New York Giants. 33-15 was the final. So going into the Patriot bye week, they are the top seed in the AFC. And I think there are two conversations here. One, I would be curious your thoughts. Maybe you haven't had a chance to watch a lot of the New England Patriots. I'd be curious your takeaways vis-a-vis a potential matchup between Denver and New England. I already had New England above Denver in the AFC, and I think I have no reason to change my mind after last night. I think that the New England Patriots, I think they have a lot of the same thoughts that the Denver Broncos do. I just think they're more dynamic. I mean, if I could put it, there's a lot of other things, but I mean, just at the end of the day, the Patriots in some ways are more dynamic Denver Broncos. Their run game is more dynamic, not necessarily more productive, but more dynamic with Travion Henderson. Drake May, there's no doubt he's more dynamic than Bo Nix. He's doubling him up in passing yards. He leads the NFL in passing yards. And the Broncos defense is better than New England, but New England has a very good defense. So I was just kind of adding it all up last night watching that game. And I just think that the Patriots, they're better. They're a better team than the Denver Broncos. And there's an easy reason for this. The easy thing to point out. And just look at the two quarterbacks. Where did Drake May go in the draft? Where did Bo Nix? I'm not saying draft position is the be-all, end-all, but Sean Payton liked Drake May a lot too. If the Broncos had their pick of anybody, or let's just say they were drafting where the Patriots were, I don't think Bo Nix is a Denver Bronco. I think they take Drake May. So the easy answer to why the Patriots do a lot of the same things as the Denver Broncos, yet appear to be better than them at it or more dynamic, is because they've, even as bad as things have gotten for the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots have somehow been worse over the last few years, gotten better draft picks, getting better players, more dynamic players in. They get Will Johnson or Will Campbell, from LSU, who might on the Denver Broncos be their best offensive lineman. So being awful in the NFL, it works. Takes you a little while, but you'll eventually get there. The system is set up that a team that was as garbage as the Patriots had been after Tom Brady left, they've been able to build it back up and build it, to use a phrase from yesteryear, build it back better. Maybe not better than they were with Brady and Belichick, but just they've built it back up, and Drake May looks like the real deal. Drake May, he's the better of the two quarterbacks. But it's a more overall, if I were simplifying it, it's a more dynamic Denver Broncos. I think Vrabel and Peyton, even though they're a little bit different in terms of what side of the football they come from, I think that the core tenets of what they believe in are very similar. They have a lot of the same kind of pieces. And the transitive property doesn't necessarily apply to sports all the time. And I don't want to just sit here and say, well, because the Patriots beat the Giants, blew them out, and the Broncos had to have an insane fourth quarter comeback to beat them, then, that just means the Patriots are better. But it does help illustrate the point. You saw the Broncos against that Giants team, and you see New England, and it does lead you down the road of maybe the Patriots are a better team, but I'm telling you, regardless of the opponent, New England does a lot of things that the Broncos do, but they're more dynamic. And I think that's the little extra that you need in order to advance deep into the postseason. If the season ended today, and if the playoffs played out, because we're talking about the 1 and 2 seed, AFC Championship in Foxborough, I'm taking New England. Neutral site, I'm taking New England. But what maybe could even the playing field a little bit is if the Broncos get to host New England. Because I don't think the separation between New England and Denver is so vast that even home field advantage can't make a difference. But New England's a better team. So what can you do? Make sure they have to come to you. And that's the other discussion here. Because I think, I don't know about you, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today. Are we kind of beyond, can we all just agree that how we feel about the Denver Broncos is just the way we feel? Are we into perception changing wins anymore? Are there enough left on the schedule? The one I could say for Denver is if they go into Arrowhead on Christmas with still Kansas City needing that game more than Denver, and Denver beats them again, then maybe that could be one. But I mean, there's no telling where the Chiefs are going to be at that point. They could be just about out of it by then. I think we are. I think we're past this. I think we're at the point of the season, and you could push back if you don't feel that way. Maybe it's a certain team that you don't feel that way about. I kind of feel like however you feel about these teams, you're not going to change your mind between now and the end of the year. And I would say New England and Denver would be that. How I feel about Denver is not going to change. How I feel about New England as a team and in relationship to the Broncos, it's not going to change. I can just tell you right now, it's not going to. Barring some kind of key injury for either team, I don't foresee myself changing my mind. I'm open to it, but I don't see myself doing that. So I think it's very important for the Denver Broncos to get home field. That's what the rest of this Broncos regular season is about. I still think that they need to get RJ Harvey going and establish him and all that kind of stuff. But I think the Broncos are going to win most of the games down the stretch the same way they've won all of these other games. I think it's about right there at the top of the storylines from here on out is just, will the Broncos get home field advantage? And it's going to be difficult because the way it's looking right now, and it's always subject to change, right? As wild as this season has been, I'm not putting anything past anybody. But right now, you're looking at New England with 4 games left. The Broncos would have to win at no fewer than 3 of their remaining 5 games. They probably need to win 4, the way I'm looking at it. So New England has a bye week this week. Then they go to Buffalo. That could very well be a loss. I'm saying if New England, they have home game against Buffalo, they're at Baltimore, at New York, the Jets, not that it matters, and home against the Dolphins. Okay, even if they go 2-2, which is what I have put into my equation here, the Broncos probably need to win 4 of their remaining 6. So New England, let's say, loses at home to Buffalo, loses on the road to Baltimore. They beat the Jets and the Dolphins. Okay, right now, too much to ask for the Jets or the Dolphins to beat New England at this point. So here's the Broncos' remaining schedule. So if that's the way New England plays out, the Broncos need 4 wins out of these remaining, 4 out of their 5. 3 would trigger a tiebreaker, which right now the Denver Broncos, in terms of division record, would not win. So that's why I'm saying they got to beat New England outright for this thing. It does not look like the tiebreakers are going to go their way. So 4 to beat New England outright. At the Raiders, home against Green Bay, home against Jacksonville, at Kansas City, home against the Chargers. Can the Broncos win 4 of those games? I think you look at, I'll just say this. If the Broncos need to win week 18 at home against the Chargers, they will. Whatever that's going to mean. If the Broncos have to get that game week 18 against the Chargers, I think that they do. So the Raider game would be another one. There's 2. We're halfway there. Now you got to take tiebreakers out of it. You got to beat 2 of the following 3 teams. Green Bay, Jacksonville at home, and win in Arrowhead. Which also factor in the fact that as long as the Broncos don't stub their toe this weekend against the Raiders, they will be on a how many game winning streak? And I just don't see this team winning every game from here on out. They will drop 1. But the question right now is, will they drop 2? If they drop 2, I think that they're going to have to perhaps go to New England in the AFC Championship. I still, as much as I think Kansas City is absolutely done, I don't think that the Broncos win in Arrowhead on Christmas. And I say they split with Green Bay and Jacksonville. I think New England's going to get the 1 seed. I'll take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. The other part of this, though, is even if New England gets the number 1 seed, or if they do, I should say, playoffs started today, Broncos would be welcoming Buffalo. So they'd have an AFC championship in Foxborough on the horizon, and the team that would be greeting them week 1 of the playoffs is Buffalo. I don't think they will get the number 1 seed. I think Denver needs the number 1 seed in order to get out of the AFC. What say you? 719-247-1313. Getting your thoughts at 719-247-1313. The first text is about my assertion. I think New England's better than Denver. Forgetting, I know that New England's the number one seed. They haven't had a bye week yet. So we could just at least chalk it up to that. This is not a standings thing. This is an eyeball test. This is look in numbers. I think New England is better. And I would take Drake May over Bo Nix. I would take the more dynamic New England running game, especially at this point with no J.K. Dobbins, over the Broncos running game. Let's say the weapons outside of the run game that each of these teams have is a push. Maybe even slightly in the Broncos' favor. Maybe Cortland Sutton's better than anyone Drake May is throwing to. Okay? Defense, you would give it to the Denver Broncos. Here's a question. Who would have the better coach, Vrabel or Peyton? I love Mike Vrabel. I do. I think he's a tremendous coach. I think you'd have to give it to Sean Payton. I think you'd have to say that Sean Payton's a better coach. But it's funny you bring that up. I was thinking about that. I'll take it one step further and ask the question. I don't know if you agree with me. I think I would have to go Peyton. The guy does have a Super Bowl ring, but I don't think it's this isn't Sean Payton going up against Liam Cohen, with all due respect to Liam Cohen, who's done a tremendous job with Jacksonville, but come on now. Like, those two right now are not Vrabel's close. But who would you take? I'll take your question one step further. Peyton and Vance Joseph versus Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels. So if you would give Sean Payton the nod, would you say that Josh McDaniels is a better offensive coordinator than Vance Joseph is a defensive coordinator? I think maybe, and then where would that get you? Would you take Vrabel and McDaniels over Peyton and Vance Joseph? I might. I know I don't like Josh McDaniels any more than you do, and he hasn't even come within 300 yards of my favorite football team. So I understand if you're a Broncos fan that you can never acknowledge that guy is even halfway decent at anything. And I think Vance Joseph has done a phenomenal job. That's the spot in this matchup. If you just line it up, it's almost like I look at like the defenses. Like, yeah, Denver's better, but man, New England's has a good defense too. Peyton and Vance Joseph, that's a hard duo to beat. Vrabel and McDaniels? And I think I might lean New England, and then ultimately, where's the next step you would go? May over Knicks, and that's what puts it over the top for New England. Peyton over Vrabel, but Vrabel and McDaniels over Peyton and Vance Joseph, and then Vrabel, McDaniels, and May over Peyton, Vance, and Bo Nix. But it just illustrates my point. The separation between the two teams is not vast. Okay, I think New England's a better team. I feel that deep in my bones. But New England is not far superior to the Denver Broncos. Because guess what? No one in the AFC is far superior to anybody. No one in the NFL is far superior. I thought it was the Rams, and then they got beat by Carolina. So nobody. I was sitting there last night watching that football game, and I've been talking about it. I know I've said it into the microphone, but I had a quiet moment of reflection. I went, holy bleep. The 1 seeds in the NFL right now are New England and Chicago. What? And then go even further. Right? The three division leaders in the division, 3 of the division leaders are New England, Denver, and Jacksonville. What? Now, the NFL, or the NFC, I should say, beyond Chicago, I don't think there are a ton of surprises. But the Bears being at the top, like I thought that the Bears would be better this year. I mean, the way things are going in the NFL this year, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I don't know that anyone in the AFC can say, oh, clearly we are obviously better than everyone else in this field. No one can. I think I'm still with Buffalo here. The Buffalo in all of this. I still think part of the reason why Denver needs to get home field is because then it would also make the 2 teams that I think can beat the Broncos in the current AFC playoff field. One of them would be eliminated. Either New England or Buffalo would be done after the first weekend. And they wouldn't. Now, the funny thing is, if that happened, guess who Denver's first opponent in the playoffs will be? Buffalo, because they'd be the lowest remaining seed. But getting one of those teams away, I think that the best case scenario for the Denver Broncos, they get the 1 seed. New England takes care of home field against Buffalo. And we build towards New England visiting Denver in an AFC championship. Where have I seen that movie before? And then what was the next scene right after that? I believe it occurred in the same place that this year's final game is played. Right? I mean, how would that be for spooky? The year 2015, Broncos have a questionable quarterback, an elite pass rush. They welcome New England to Denver in an AFC championship, only to go to Santa Clara to play in a Super Bowl against the NFL MVP, Matthew Stafford. I mean, if you believe in Aquarius and Sagittarius and Pisces and all of that stuff, the way this season is shaping up for the Denver Broncos, that has got to have some cosmic meaning to it, right? This from the 719. I think that if the Broncos are the 2 seed and they have to welcome Buffalo, which would be the matchup today, I think Denver welcomes the challenge and can beat Buffalo and show the rest of the NFL that they belong. And if they can beat Buffalo, then it now becomes a thing where Denver is not a fluke and the run is not a fluke. I do think it would become a revenge game for Denver. I think if they were to be the 2 seed and beat Buffalo, I'll say this, the Broncos this isn't about fearing anybody, right? That any fear that might have existed with the Denver Broncos, that went out the window when they beat Philadelphia. And if any of it creeped back in, it was all the way gone when they beat Kansas City. The Broncos believe wholeheartedly they can beat anyone in the NFL. This is not about being scared of Buffalo. So I think you're absolutely right. I think they would embrace that challenge. I'm saying from a strategic standpoint, from a matchup standpoint, it's best that they don't play Buffalo. Because I don't think that Denver revenge game, all of that kind of stuff. That being said, I think Buffalo beats Denver. And that's why I say the best scenario is that Denver gets home field, New England and Buffalo. One of those teams is off the board after the first weekend, and that team that remains ultimately has to go to Denver. And if I could go a step further, I think you'd rather play New England than Buffalo. But the Broncos don't fear anybody. And I do think that Sean Payton would absolutely have his team embracing that. They would relish the opportunity to go up against Buffalo. I just don't think they come out on top in that matchup. Getting more text messages in. We'll continue this conversation right after the top of the hour here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Appreciate you tuning in on our social media platforms, watching the show on a daily basis, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. The handle the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. While you are there, like, subscribe, follow. You can interact with the show through those social media channels. It is the year 2025. You could also get in via the text line at 719-247-1313, which many of you have. So let's just keep it rolling, shall we? For those of you just joining us, New England last night, with a resounding victory over the New York Giants, will now go into their bye week. So things can change. Obviously, New England's going to be idle this week. But as of right now, New England is the number 1 seed. And I said at the most optimistic I can be on Broncos fans' behalf in terms of the Broncos' path to earn the 1 seed is that you're going to probably have to win 4 of the final 5 games, which is crazy because the Broncos have done nothing but just keep winning and winning and winning. But that's the thing. Look at the rest of the AFC. Right? Like there's some wiggle room for some of these other spots. But if you're going to get the top spot with the way that New England and Denver have been playing, like you got to thread the needle. But the Broncos have been doing all this winning for 2 straight months, and yet they're going to have to only drop 1 of their final 5 games to be the number 1 overall seed. And I'm telling you that they have to. Because the most optimistic I can be is that New England comes out of the bye week and loses at home to Buffalo and at Baltimore, because they go to the Jets and home against the Dolphins, and it would be flat out disrespectful to Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots for everything they have done to say, oh, they'll definitely lose in New Jersey or home against Miami, especially if they need to beat the Dolphins at home in January to earn the number 1 seed. And because right now New England has a better in-division record than Denver. Now that can change. I'm just going with the cleanest, easiest way for the Denver Broncos to get the number 1 seed is to win 4 of their remaining 5 games. And that's even with me kind of saying, I don't think New England's losing both of these games out of the bye week. I don't think they lose to both Buffalo and Baltimore. I think they very well lose to 1. But let's just take for right now, because that's the fun thing about all this, is that it will change. It will morph over the next couple of weeks. So let's say that the Broncos need to get 4 of their final 5 games. Raiders, Packers, Jags, at Arrowhead, home against the Chargers. I'll put this week's game and the last game of the season. If the Broncos need it to get home field advantage, they're going to beat the Chargers at home. Okay, so there's 2. You need to find 2 more out of home games against Green Bay, Jacksonville, and a road game against Kansas City. I don't think they win 4 of their last 5. I think they go 3-2. And that, to me, says New England's going to be the number 1 overall seed. But the better question is, does it matter to you? Because I would think if looking at the other side of it, unless they lost to Jacksonville, that would be one that could be problematic for the Broncos getting the 2 seed. But let's say they lose to Green Bay and they lose at Kansas City. and they get the 2 seed. Does that matter to you? Does that make a big difference? I think it does. I think it's important for the Denver Broncos to have home field through the playoffs. If the Broncos had to go to New England in a hypothetical AFC championship game, I would take the Patriots. I think home field matters to them. I'm getting the sense from you that not so much. That perhaps it does not matter if the Broncos get the 1 seed or not, because either you think they're good enough to triumph anyway, or you may not believe in New England. This from the 719. One thing with New England is that they have played a relatively paperweight schedule, not trying to fault them as they can only play who's on their schedule, but the best team they played is Buffalo, which isn't saying a ton. Well, let me ask you this then. So if beating Buffalo in Buffalo, right? That game was in Buffalo. If beating Buffalo isn't saying a lot, then who have the Broncos beaten that would be saying a lot? And maybe your answer to that is they haven't, which is fine. I'm just saying if beating Buffalo isn't an accomplishment, then I don't know who the Broncos have beaten that's an accomplishment. Because last time I checked, Buffalo's a playoff team. Kansas City's not. So one of the best wins all year for the Denver Broncos would be a lesser win than what New England has under their belt. Or is it the Philadelphia game? But even then, that's one. I think beating Buffalo is an accomplishment. I know they haven't looked all season like the Buffalo Bills we all know and love. I think that team's still in there. I do. And they are the last team in this AFC playoff picture right now that I would want to play. If I'm New England, if I'm Vrabel, I would just as soon not have to play Buffalo for a third time. Things can get goofy, especially if New England comes out of the bye and beats Buffalo again. You want to see them for a third time? Like maybe you'd be confident. Buffalo is the last team I want to play. That's how I build these entire playoffs. If I'm Indy, Denver, Baltimore, New England, Jacksonville, the last team I want to play is Buffalo. I would just as soon let somebody else knock them out and take my chances with everybody else. And if the Broncos don't get the number 1 seed, they would be playing Buffalo. I don't like that matchup for the Denver Broncos. This from Tom. I don't think Broncos need the number 1 seed. Number 2 will be okay. Pats won't make it to the AFC title game, which I find certainly if New England gets the 1 seed, I'm getting from context clues you don't believe in the New England Patriots very much. I don't understand why you don't, Tom. To be honest with you, I don't understand why you seem to be very high on the Broncos and not high at all on New England. I mean, if you want to put Denver above New England, be my guest. Like I said, the separation between the two teams isn't great. But I don't get why you're down on New England and so high on the Denver Broncos. But New England not getting the AFC championship, if the season ended today and everything went chalk, so you would be saying you would take Baltimore going into Foxborough. If everything were chalk based on the current playoff field, because Denver, let's say they get past Buffalo, they would play Jacksonville. Baltimore would have a home game against the Chargers if the season ended today. You have Baltimore winning that game. You would take Baltimore going into Foxborough and winning a game. I could envision that. I don't, if it's the Chargers or Jacksonville, I don't think the Chargers or Jacksonville go into New England and win. If it's Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, okay. I don't believe in Baltimore as much as I believe in Buffalo. But I can see, I mean, that would have to be what you're saying. Because again, Chargers, Jacksonville, not going into Foxborough and winning. I don't think. And for the record, if it ends up going that way, I don't think either one of those teams win in Denver either. I'm not as worried about the Baltimore Ravens at this point as some other people might be. There are other matchups I would prefer. But the team that I look at in the AFC, I say we always got to label one team no one wants to play. I think it's Buffalo. I think in a quiet moment, you gave them truth serum. I think the other 6 playoff coaches would say, I just as soon not play Buffalo, not have to deal with Josh Allen. Scott asked the question. I was kind of matching up quarterback versus quarterback, running game versus running game, skill positions, and just kind of lining it up. And who would you take? Who has the better of that matchup with the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots? And I said I would take Sean Payton over Mike Vrabel, but I think I would take Mike Vrabel and McDaniels over Peyton and Vance Joseph. Scott agrees, says, I think McDaniels has done more with less talent than Joseph. And certainly we're talking about the guys surrounding Drake May, not Drake May. Like Drake May is super talented. I think you're right. And look, it's a great matchup. I mean, the minds that are involved, McDaniels, Joseph, Peyton, Vrabel, the chess match between Peyton and Vrabel, the chess match between McDaniels and Vance Joseph. Forget who would win. Don't you just want to see that? Very rarely do we make the coaching matchup the best matchup of that might be the battle of wits between those 4 gentlemen would be probably the most intriguing thing about a potential AFC championship, whether it be in Denver or Foxborough. And then it would be inevitably, Drake May going up against Benito, or maybe it's Will Campbell against Nick Benito. This from the 719. Vance Joseph is a lot better defensive coordinator than he was a coach. Reminds me of Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips was a great defensive coordinator, but not really a good coach. 100% agree, but that also can be said about Josh McDaniels. Even more so. I think Wade Phillips, the head coach, could coach laps around Josh McDaniels, the head coach. But I think that's what you have in McDaniel. You have 2 of the better coaches in the NFL in Sean Payton and Mike Vrabel. And you have 2 guys that I went in, and I know a lot of rumors are swirling about Vance Joseph. I do not make Vance Joseph my head coach. I mean, if I'm trying to think of Tennessee, no, because they have Cam Ward. Let's say New Orleans just decides 1 year is enough of Kellen Moore. maybe I might take a chance on Vance Joseph learning from previous mistakes. But Vance Joseph is terrific with the job that he has. And I don't know that I would want to be the team that would take that leap and say the second go around for Vance Joseph as a head coach. I would like to be the team that does that. I think he's well suited for the job he has. And I can say that even more so with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels never getting another coaching job. Vance Joseph might get another one. Josh McDaniels never will. 719-24-7-1313. Get your thoughts in. Do the Broncos need the number one seed in the AFC? And if it ends up being New England against Denver, who do you got? More Drive Time Sports after this on Extra Sports 1300. Pats Broncos, who you got? And does that game have to be in Denver? Now, there are other teams in the playoffs. Let me ask this question. Is no one even remotely worried about Buffalo? Is it just me and Troy Aikman? Because Troy Aikman's with me on this one. Like, but I don't want any part of Buffalo if I'm one of these other 6 playoff teams. Not saying that Buffalo is invincible or unbeatable, but just like that's part of what's going on in the AFC right now. Like, you can believe in one of these teams or another one of these teams, but man, do you have a lot of latitude to be able to doubt some of these teams. Like, I don't blame anyone for not jumping into the pool head first on New England or Denver or the Chargers, who are once again a walking mash unit, or the Indianapolis Colts, who are fading. We might not even be talking about the Colts in the playoffs coming up here shortly. How about the Houston Texans and what they're doing? Baltimore, I get it. None of and that's what makes these conversations so fascinating, is that there's really none of these teams that deserve your blind allegiance or your blind faith that are going to make it through. They all have warts, and that's the at least for 1 year. I won't say it's post Mahomes or post Brady. Well, it is post Brady, but I won't say it's post the Chiefs dynasty just yet. But we even had years during the Patriot dynasty where other teams popped up and won. So this 1 year respite from the Chiefs dynasty, without that team kind of shaping the entire narrative and saying, oh, everyone's got to go through this team, they're the team to be, all that kind of stuff, it just creates a bunch of teams that nobody overly respects, but no one can just dismiss completely out of hand. Now, in the NFC, I don't think that they're quite dealing with the same questions, except about their top seed. Now, I like the Bears. I love Caleb Williams, and Ben Johnson's done a phenomenal job. This is not 1985. Even though right now the 2 top seeds are the teams that met in that Super Bowl, New England and Chicago. I think there are some really good teams in the NFC. I think in the AFC they're all good, but they're and the other part is they all just got here. Right? The Broncos just got here. New England just got here. Jacksonville just got here. It's like we don't even have some teams that are like, we have Baltimore, but who knows? Their hold at the top of the AFC North is tenuous at best. Buffalo has the final playoff spot right now. It's not like they're sitting pretty. Like, we don't even have these also rans all over the place that we can look to. These are all new. It's not just that none of these teams are Kansas City. They're all new. They were all bad last year or 2 years ago. Parity like we have not seen in the NFL in years. What is going on right now in the AFC? And even though I have a vested interest in there not being the most parity in the NFL that we have seen in years, I can acknowledge that the greater good for a year is that it's absolute chaos. You don't want sustained chaos, but for 1 year, Even if it's at the expense of the team that I love the most. I can see where this is a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoy talking about it. That's for sure. Speaking of which, Brett says, I understand your playoff scenario. You didn't mention Kansas City. Who would they play in the AFC Championship game? They would play no one. Play no one, Brett. I don't know if you've noticed this. I say that knowing that you constantly troll me about the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not in the playoffs right now. And just so everyone can hear, gather around, they're not getting in. They are done. I got people around me that are more optimistic about the Chiefs than I am. They are done. And I compare them to what we're dealing with the Denver Nuggets right now. The Nuggets, okay, you lose to Chicago at home, fine. You lose to San Antonio at home, fine. You lose last night, fine. But you can't lose all of these games. And it's the same thing with Kansas City. I understand every one of the 6 teams they've lost to are all good. They're all good teams. They don't have a bad loss on their schedule. But you can't lose to all of them. You just can't. You got to beat somebody. At some point, you got to win one of these games. The Kansas City Chiefs have had must-win games, huge games for these last 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, you go to Dallas, Thanksgiving, short week, okay, you lose to them. Or you go into Denver and you lose to them. In a vacuum, I say, I could see Kansas City losing either one of those 2 games. You can't lose both. You can't. You have to win one of them. They have basically kissed the AFC West and a playoff spot goodbye in the course of 5 days. You can lose to one of them. You cannot lose to both. I don't know where you're at with Kansas City. They're done. And this is not a conversation that I think you want to get into right now. I mean, we got an hour and a half. We can if you want. This makes 0 sense to me. And really think about it. Take the pettiness out of it. And I'm not singling you out, Brett. I'm talking to a wider audience here. Take your feelings about the Kansas City Chiefs out of it for just a moment and just be analytical. This makes no sense. It makes 0 sense why the Kansas City Chiefs still, however, this many weeks into the season, are 6-6 and outside of the playoffs looking in. It makes no sense. This is completely unacceptable. Like, it had to end sometime. Right? Their reign of terror had to end at some point. But you telling me it's going to end with them not even being in the tournament? That's how it's going to end? Like the Patriot dynasty, I don't know it ended when Brady left, but the guy who ended it is Mike Vrabel. His Titans team ended the Patriot dynasty. That was, you're done here, and we move on. And Kansas City took the vacated throne. But we're not even going to get that. We're not even going to get a team going into Arrowhead or, Kansas City bowing out in the. We're not even going to get that. They're going to miss the playoffs entirely. Reed, Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris Jones. This makes no sense. But it's happening. It's happening right in front of our very eyes. You can lose to Denver. You can lose to Dallas. You cannot lose to both. And they did. The only thing that is the saving grace for them is the fact that, Justin Herbert's having surgery on every part of his body every single week because he has no one to block for him. So I suppose I should be slightly more optimistic because it's not like the Chargers are so far out of the reach. They're 2 games up, though. And Kansas City had back-to-back games that were must-wins for one reason or another, and they lost both of them. And I'm supposed to believe that they're going to run the table? Someone else can be that. Well, let Nick Wright be that deluded. I'm not. I always pride myself on being one of the good ones. One of the good Chiefs fans. I'm sorry. I can't. If they would have beaten Dallas, fine. All good. Even if they would have still been on the outside looking in, that's okay. They got time. You had 2 must-win games, 2 huge games, and you lose both of them? So very long answer to a simple question. Kansas City not playing anybody in the playoffs right now, Brett. 719-247-1313. Got to take a break. I heart you, Brett. You make the show better. Anybody who texts in the show automatically makes it better. Yeah, I'm going through it right now. All right? I'm going through it a little bit right now. Trying to enjoy my time in South Florida. I'm in literal paradise. And I'm watching the seconds tick down and my team losing. Again. I feel like Brian Kelly. We're talking about the same thing again. Denver was a must-win. Lost that. Okay. Good on the Broncos. They took care of business. But surely the Kansas City Chiefs would bounce back against Dallas. Do we have to have a conversation about Dallas now? I think we're going to, because they play Thursday night. Got to reach out to Donovan Lewis from the ticket down in Dallas. Get him on, because I don't know about you. I think after the Denver-Dallas game, I think a lot of people around here left the Cowboys for dead. And like the Undertaker, they have suddenly sat up in the middle of the ring. But right now, we continue our conversation regarding the playoff picture. New England finishes out the week with a big win big in terms of the margin of victory over the New York Giants. Jackson Dart, you got to slide, dude. You got to slide. You got to get out of bounds. Can't keep getting hit like that. But anyway. No, Brett, I'm not talking about LeBron. Albert says the winner of this weekend's Chiefs-Texans game will get on a roll and make the playoffs. They might even be the team to give Buffalo their best match in the playoffs. Imagine that. Well, I'll tell you, and fear's a strong word, but I'll use it. If the other 6 teams in the AFC fear Buffalo, the team that Buffalo fears, I don't think is any one of the 6 teams in the playoffs. It's the team 3 or 4 spots back of them. That's, what did they put up? Hovering? Is that the way they usually do in the hunt? Did they do hovering last night on Monday Night Football? It's Kansas City. The last thing Buffalo wants to see, I think, here's where I think Buffalo is right now. I think Buffalo is looking at this and saying, we're good. Would we like to be higher? Would we like to beat New England next week and try to make a late season miracle run at the division? Yes. Do we love that we're in the 7th spot? No. Do we fear anybody above us in the standings? Absolutely not. But let's just say my angst about the Kansas City Chiefs is not totally founded, and let's say they do end up taking over the Charger spot. That would be the video. Remember when LeBron, that meme where LeBron's at or I guess it's a GIF because it's kind of video-ish, where LeBron's at the free throw line, he hears the substitution buzzer, and he looks over, and Kawhi's coming back in, and he goes, nah. Like, dang it, Kawhi's back in. That's what Josh Allen and company are if Mahomes gets in. If the Chiefs end up checking into the playoffs, Buffalo's like, crap. We had it right there for us. We do not fear any of these teams. And somehow Kansas City makes their way back in. But to Albert's point, man, what's up with the Texas teams? Did they get the memo late that the season had started? Like Houston and Dallas, they were done. Forget them. And now all of a sudden, both of them are making a late season run at their division. I did mention LeBron, didn't I? Getting back to the conversation about New England v. Denver. I think New England is a better team. I think that they would beat the Denver Broncos if the Broncos had to go to New England for the AFC Championship. this question posed. Let's take the coaches out of it, which I would say all in all, I'll take McDaniels and Vrabel over Peyton and Vance Joseph by a smidge, by a skosh. Player versus player with no injuries. Who do you take, New England or Denver? I think I take New England where it matters the most. I do, because I could say player for player all the way down the roster. I would say Broncos top to bottom are a better roster than New England. But Drake May is better than Bo Nix. I would take Drake May over Bo Nix. I would take Travion Henderson over RJ Harvey right now. Which is the one thing, by the way, as much as the Broncos got another win and move on, I don't know that I saw from the run game that I wanted to. Did you? Here's Sean Payton from Sunday about having to go to that short passing game rather than continuing to run the football against Washington.
It was one of those frustrating nights running the ball. They did a few things differently by staying in their heavy personnel. Teams have been able to run the ball in sub against them. And to Dan's credit, they didn't allow that. So, like, we then started checking to some, like, scattering out of some of our one-back runs to throw it against their base.
A lot of football jargon, yada, yada, yada. The Commanders wouldn't let the Broncos run the football, which in and of itself is kind of a troubling thing for Sean Payton to say, isn't it? They didn't let you? Impose your will. Do it anyway. I mean, I know you won the game. So, like, look, that it's for next week. You try and get the run game led by RJ Harvey going against the Raiders. They still have time. But you couldn't run the ball? That can't be the case. That is the end of the Denver Broncos. I'll tell you more than any particular team. The end of the Broncos in this season and these playoffs coming up is if they get into a game where they can't run the ball. They must run the ball. Believe in Bo Nix however much you want to. And I, as I've said, the third quarter Bo Nix, the guy making that throw at the end of the second quarter, I think the Broncos need that guy. But let's back up a step here. They need to run the football. How can they be expected to go through the AFC playoffs if they can't do the thing that is fundamental to their identity? So if I'm a Broncos fan, I don't like that from Sean Payton one bit. They ain't let you run. You do it anyway. Now, the Broncos could be getting back Ben Powers. And credit to the guys who have been on that offensive line. You haven't really missed Ben Powers that much. But at that guard position, he can help this Broncos run game. And RJ Harvey, we're a couple of games in here. So, all right, still some patience, perhaps. But you got to do it. You got to be able to run the football. And to say the Commanders just didn't let you. I mean, I know, tip of the cap to Washington. That was because of how sideways their season had gone. That was their biggest game of the season, and they rose to the occasion, and credit to them. There's always credit to be given to the opponent, but the Broncos are the superior football team here. They got bigger plans, and the way they're going to fulfill those plans is they got to be able to run the football. So I still think that's a work in progress. That was not the most impressive thing by any stretch of the imagination. I would actually say overall the run game of the Denver Broncos from its running backs was a minus, or at least not nearly where you wanted it to be. But back to the question, I'll take the Patriots running game. Running game's important to both of these teams. I take the Patriots running game right now. I'll take Drake May right now. And I think that the separation at those places is perhaps enough to overcome the fact that, yes, the Denver Broncos defense is better than the Patriot defense. But if the Broncos can't run it, and if Bo Nix is the lesser quarterback in the matchup, does New England need to have as good of a defense as the Denver Broncos to win? Top to bottom, yeah, Broncos are probably a better roster. But let's look at the most important positions. I mean, could you take Stephon Diggs or Hunter Henry over Cortland Sutton and Evan Ingram? I know it's tough to say with the way that Ingram performed on Sunday, but take the season in its totality. Or Troy Franklin. I would say that's pretty close to a push. Maybe a slight lean towards Denver. But I think there's some separation between Drake May and Bo Nix. And I think right now, and part of this is the injury to J.K. Dobbins, the timing of it all. I don't know if it's J.K. Dobbins versus Travion Henderson that I would take Henderson. But that's not who it is. It's R.J. Harvey. All in all, Broncos probably top to bottom a better roster. I think that the New England Patriots are close enough in the areas where they're not better than Denver, and they're better in areas that are going to be very important in a potential matchup between those two teams. Back to the question of earlier text in and pointed out New England's schedule, which is a fair one. New England did play, I believe they finished lower in their division. You just look at it, and it overall is an easier schedule. They're in an easier division. Just start there. They're in an easier division than Denver is. But I push back against the notion that them beating Buffalo wasn't a great win. That's a great win, I think. And I said, well, if Buffalo is not beating Buffalo is not a great accomplishment or anything to write home about, then how many wins are there on the Broncos schedule that are that way? And I did concede Philadelphia, but right now is beating, I know for the optics and the history and everything, beating Kansas City is a huge win for the Denver Broncos. But let's assess where Kansas City and Buffalo are right now. Let's assess where these games were played. I don't know if you're not impressed by New England beating Buffalo that you could be overly impressed with Denver beating Kansas City. And the texter says, sorry, Ryan, but in my opinion, the Eagles win is much more impressive than the Bills win. Buffalo is not the same team they were. They built a defense to stop Kansas City and no one else. But why doesn't that? I mean, we can agree on the Eagles thing. I think we agree. I don't think that the Eagles is a far superior win, but it's a better win. It's the better of two wins. No question. No question about it. Can Bosa in that group, and they're not great. It's not a great defense, but Bosa can't. He did a pretty good job getting to Aaron Rodgers, just as Aaron Rodgers' face. how well that Buffalo pass rush worked on Sunday. I know Buffalo has had better defenses, but that's part of the equation. But James Cook, Josh Allen, and here's something, and I'm not necessarily adding it to my argument, but it's just an observation. Can you imagine if Buffalo, whether they are a lesser version of themselves or not at this point, could you imagine if, I don't care what seed they are right now, if Buffalo plays an entire postseason without the Chiefs even a part of it and they don't get to the Super Bowl? I don't know that firing Sean McDermott will be enough. I know they're already planning on doing this, I believe, but they're going to have to host that. They're going to have to implode their old stadium immediately. Like if they won't get it, as of right now, they're not going to get a home game. But whatever game they end up losing in the playoffs, they will have to immediately implode they got to give their fan base so much, and Sean McDermott is not going to be enough. They got to do a bunch of other stuff, like blow up the stadium immediately. At least give them that image, that catharsis of, all right, we're tearing this down and we're on to the new. All the years that the Buffalo Bills have ran up against a wall and lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs aren't even a part of the proceedings and Buffalo can't get out of the AFC. That Giannis Antetokounmpo would be absolutely a failure. That would not be a step to success. That would be an abject failure. Kansas City's not even in the mix and Buffalo doesn't win. But they're going to have to take the long road, that's for sure, sitting at the 7th seed right now. 719-247-1313, the three stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Tuesday. Coming up tonight, the Frank Serratori show as Air Force hockey just keeps on rolling. They'll be back home this weekend for 2 games with Robert Morris, and then more programming for hockey fans, Avs and Canucks, as Adam Foote will be on the bench. He's the head coach now of the Vancouver Canucks, so a little tie-in. There's some news on tonight's game for the Colorado Avalanche that I will get to. It is one of the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with another dud for the Denver Nuggets.
Nembhard. And Nembhard knocks it in, and the Nuggets have just gone dormant here.
Altitude Television on the call. The Nuggets, what is going on with them? Just a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about how Colorado teams may never lose another game on their home field or court or ice. And the Denver Nuggets have now lost 4 straight at home to the murderer's row that is the Chicago Bulls, the Sacramento Kings, the Victor Wembanyama-less San Antonio Spurs, and last night, the Dallas we traded Luka Doncic Mavericks. That's who they've lost to at home. And look, one of these games, or each one of these games in a vacuum, you could be like, all right, I could see that. 4 in a row. This is unacceptable. And I get what is kind of leading to all of this. The heartbeat of this team is not playing. And Aaron Gordon. Christian Brown is not playing. The Nuggets are shorthanded. Join the club. Everyone in the NBA is banged up right now. But because Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown, 2 of the better defensive players on the Denver Nuggets team, the Nuggets are giving up a ton of points to teams that score a ton of points. Okay, but the Denver Nuggets were up by 17 against the Dallas Mavericks last night. What happened? A consistent theme of the Denver Nuggets of late is not being locked in for 48 minutes, not being locked in for 4 quarters. And you add those other things on top of it, and you end up losing to a team you have no business losing to. Now, whose job is this to fix it? It's David Adelman's. And even if you want to put the onus on the players, which isn't unfair, is a coach's job not to motivate the troops, to get the guys fired up, to get them to put an end to this nonsense? This is the first, we'll say, mini crisis of the David Adelman era in Denver. And if this team doesn't perform at the level that people expect it to, David Adelman's the one that's going to be looked at. The front office did their job in the offseason. Now it's David Adelman's job to take the roster that has been assembled and get it to where it needs to be. And it looked earlier in the season, everything was great. Nuggets were absolutely rolling. And then the first bit of adversity, and they're losing to the Bulls, the Kings, the Spurs without Victor Wembanyama, and the Dallas Mavericks consecutively at home. David, if it were Michael Malone, the Nuggets would have been called out about 3 games ago. And I would have played that audio for you on this show. And like Michael Malone calling out the Denver Nuggets again. David Adelman, maybe that's not his style, and that's fine. Part of Michael Malone's style got him fired. But whatever it is that David Adelman does when things like this happen, he needs to do it. Is it personnel switching? Is it, a fiery pregame speech? Is it benching a guy? Is it whatever it is, he's got to figure it out. Because the pressure this season, now that we've seen Jamal Murray is healthy, was healthy. Nikola Jokic is playing at this level. What the bench has been, like this is on the shoulders of David Adelman. He's going to get blamed if they don't get where you and I think they need to go. And I don't think that's totally unfair, by the way. So some people did question whether the Denver Nuggets went far enough in their coaching search to inevitably just go with David Adelman. Well, part of what can prove that they were right is David Adelman under some pressure getting the Nuggets to stop this foolishness. But it's been 4 consecutive home games to less than the Michael Jordan Bulls that they have lost. Can't happen. Can't go through this. And if we're on this collision course for the Nuggets in Oklahoma City, guess what? Oklahoma City has not slowed down once. They're still rolling. They're beating everybody. And now the Nuggets, perhaps, I never thought I'd say this, going out on the road for 4 games may be good for them. Put the home court woes of late aside, go out on the road, beat some of those teams, and come back and be ready to take on Houston in 2 of your next 3 home games after the road trip. But this is where we see. This is where we see what David Adelman can do with some adversity. It's not and here's the thing about it. It's not the most adversity this team is going to face this season. This is not as difficult as it's going to get for them. They got to find a way immediately to get out of this funk that they're in. Because they shouldn't be in a funk like this. I don't care who's hurt. Let's go now to story number 2. Westwood One Sports on the call. Ashford here on Extra Sports 1300. Light work by the Patriots last night as they beat the New York Giants 33-15 to retake the AFC's top seed as they head into their bye week. So the Broncos can do something about that with the win this weekend against the Raiders. But what has been the primary topic of conversation today is if these 2 teams are on a collision course, who are you taking, New England or Denver? And the other part of this is does that game between New England and Denver need to be in Denver? And to that, I say, I think it does. Because I think New England is better enough that if Denver has to go to Foxborough, I would take New England to win that game. And I just think in a general sense, the Denver Broncos need as much home field as they can get. Whether they get the 1 seed or the 2 seed, they might end up playing Buffalo at home one way or another. But I think that the Denver Broncos need the number 1 seed to get out of the AFC. Just bigger picture. If the Broncos are going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, I think that they have to play all of their playoff games at home. I think it could be that kind of a difference maker for them. Now, I don't think every team, I think they can go on the road and beat some of the teams in the AFC. But again, Buffalo, which that takes care of itself. New England, which they'll need to put in some work. Broncos need those games at home. And in order to get home field throughout the AFC, I think the way you need to look at this reasonably is that the Denver Broncos, at worst, probably have to win 4 of their next 5. New England comes out of the bye week, home against Buffalo and at Baltimore. Those are not easy games. But even if they drop those 2, they have the Jets and the Dolphins to close out the season. The Denver Broncos obviously have a more difficult schedule than that. And they're going to have to win more games down the stretch than New England. Even if New England splits their last 4 games, which I think is feasible, Broncos got to win 4 or 5. Raiders, okay. Chargers, week 18. I think they'll get it done. I don't think they lose to both Jacksonville and Green Bay. Can they win both of those games, Green Bay and Jacksonville, and then lose to Kansas City at Arrowhead? They still might get the top seed if they do that. I think you look at the 2 games at home after the Raider game, you say Green Bay, Jacksonville, Denver's got to win both. If Denver wins both, they got a real shot at the top seed. If they drop one of those, I think New England's going to get the 1 seed. And now let's move here to story number 3, as my computer is not. Here we go. Story number 3. That is a throwback. That was not the clip that I had queued up earlier, but my computer went on the fritz. This is not about Bowen Byram. This is about Valerian Nichushkin. Tonight, when the Avalanche play the Vancouver Canucks at 7 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300, Valerian Nichushkin will be back with the team. And think about that. I know the Avalanche haven't had as many injuries as the Denver Nuggets, but the Avalanche have done everything that they've done, lost once in regulation, been an absolute wagon, and they haven't had Valerian Nichushkin this whole time. Well, not whole time, most of the time. But Valerian Nichushkin back tonight for the Colorado Avalanche as they take on the Vancouver Canucks in a game you can hear right here on Extra Sports 1300. So the best team in hockey, and off to a historically great start, just got better. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Speaking of injuries, there is an update on the health of Jamal Murray. I'll let you know what's going on with that ankle next here on Extra Sports 1300. So Jamal Murray left last night's loss to the Dallas Mavericks with an ankle injury. The Nuggets have come out with their injury report, and it is good news. I don't want to, do the thing that Michael Scott did, that the doctors did all they could to try, and she is going to be fine. It's good news for Jamal Murray. He is listed as questionable for tomorrow night's game against the Indiana Pacers, which you can hear right here on Extra Sports 1300 if you're interested. So that's a good prognosis. Now, my guess is Jamal Murray does not play tomorrow night. But when Christian Brown suffered his ankle injury, a press release hit my inbox the next day of Christian Brown being reevaluated in 6 weeks. So this shows me that, or tells me that Jamal Murray's injury is not as bad as Christian Brown's or even as Aaron Gordon's, which is a good thing. But here's, just like with talking about David Adelman and the Denver Nuggets really hitting their first patch of adversity this season, this is the first real injury that Jamal Murray has sustained, and he has been playing at an all-star level. He has been healthy. He has been available. And now we kind of see, all right, how is it going to respond? It's good that he is questionable, but does that mean that he's going to be severely hampered as a player? Because even with Jamal Murray, they haven't been able to win their home games lately. If he's way less than he's been, the Nuggets are in a really tough spot, and these injuries are mounting and mounting and mounting for the Nuggets right now. But Jamal Murray officially listed as questionable with the ankle injury, which I think means right away it's not as serious as, say, Christian Brown's injury. Now let's see if he can get back out there on the court sooner rather than later, and if that ankle can be right and Jamal Murray can be right. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have a conversation about Cam Johnson now. Congratulations to him on being named the host of JJ Redick's old podcast, The Old Man and the Three. I haven't listened to all of it today. With Aaron Gordon was his first guest. You know what's funny? Cam Johnson traded for Michael Porter. And we essentially trade Curious Mike for Old Man in the Three. We still have a Nuggets player that has his own podcast. But I'll listen to it and see how much conversation they have about this. But I mean, with everything going on with the Denver Nuggets, how is Cam Johnson not like the man right now? Like, he had a really good game. What was it? So game 10, he struggled. He was out for game 11. Game 12 came back and it was pretty good. And now it's back to what it was before. What is the deal with Cam Johnson? Not to sound like Jerry Seinfeld. What's the deal? But what's the deal with him? All of these guys are out. You think it's an opportunity for a guy that went to an NBA Finals. And a guy, by the way, that played on a lesser team. Even with all the Nuggets injuries, Cam Johnson has a better supporting cast right now with the Denver Nuggets than he ever had in Brooklyn. How has Cam Johnson not been, and maybe this isn't the right word to use, beneficiary, because he's not benefiting, the Nuggets aren't benefiting, but how is he not the guy that's seeing his numbers spike with Aaron Gordon out and with Christian Brown out? Still, by the way, playing with Nikola Jokic, putting up a monster triple-double last night again. How is Cam Johnson not the beneficiary of this? I'm going to see his last few games just to give you an idea here. So which game was it? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 was Sacramento, got hurt in that game, missed the or got hurt in the Clipper game. Came back the Bulls game. He had 19 points on 6 of 12 shooting. Came back the next game 2 nights later, 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting. Efficient, good. Had 9 points against Houston. Pops back up with 20 against Sacramento in a loss. 18 with Memphis. Had 28. So I guess it has been better from Cam Johnson of late, but the results aren't any better. And he's still like 10 points on 3 of 10 shooting last night. Like he should be consistently playing at a high level, consistently putting up numbers. And it's like, since that early season, really rough stretch, he's had a couple of decent scoring games and then a bad one, and then 2 good one, bad one. That's not the player that the Nuggets were supposed to be getting. In many ways, they're supposed to get Michael Porter plus. Gives you everything Michael Porter does, plus. And the defense is now not at the same level, right? So before, when he was struggling offensively, I said, well, check out what he's doing on the defensive end. Like, in some ways, he's making up for it because he's playing very well on the defensive end. But now we're back to up and down offensively, and he's been, like the rest of the Denver Nuggets, quite poor defensively over the last 4 home games. I mean, you would think with the signs that Cam Johnson has shown that this would be, and I'm not saying that the Nuggets would be winning all of these games, but just I would just think that the constant, along with Nikola Jokic putting up triple doubles, would be Cam Johnson scoring at a high clip. Because there's no debate. He's the third guy. It's Murray, Jokic, and then it's him. I don't know. I still think he's pressing a little bit. Still don't think he completely has his role kind of figured out. And maybe it's changed a little bit with these injuries. But there's another thing that you put with David Adelman and you say, help him out. Just figure out a way. Like, it's going to be tough to win some games here with Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown out, but maybe a good opportunity to feature Cam Johnson, get him really going offensively. The number of good overall performances for Cam Johnson have not completely outweighed. It's not gotten to the point where Cam Johnson has played well in more games than he hasn't. Because a couple good ones, and then he'll have a bad game, and then a couple more good ones, and the bad one, then good one, bad one. I mean, this guy wasn't supposed to, fade into the background like Michael Porter did sometimes. Michael Porter would disappear at times. Cam Johnson's not supposed to yet. 3 of 10. 1 of 6 from deep last night. They needed him. They needed him last night in that game, and they didn't get it. I mean, he was far from the only Nugget that struggled shooting the ball. I think at one point they missed 10 shots in a row. But I would think that this will be at least where Cam Johnson gets to eat a little bit and get his before he gets put back into the box that Michael Porter used to live in when the Nuggets are fully healthy. Nuggets tomorrow night taking on the Indiana Pacers. First game of a 4-game road trip to the eastern portion of the United States. You can hear that game right here on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number. Last call for your text messages, your thoughts on this Tuesday edition of the show. So I think we're just in a situation here in the AFC where we're just going to put down everybody. It's very hard for anyone to make a case for any one team in the AFC. So we put down the other teams, and I get it. Like I'm not sitting here saying that's the wrong way to go, because sometimes that's how you got to separate teams, right? To say, well, this team isn't this. But we got into a conversation, great conversation today, by the way. Credit to you for adding to it with your thoughts at 719-247-1313. This talk about, Patriots versus Broncos. Should anybody be worried about the Bills? Who can you trust? And I think a lot of people are just resorting to saying, not this team. I don't know who it's going to be. Not that one. I think that's where we're at right now. We're eliminating teams rather than taking a New England, a Denver, and saying they're the team to beat. They're the team I believe in. Now, I said that about Buffalo. But you take Buffalo off the table, and I'm in the same mode. I'm like, though I don't think Baltimore can get through. They already have their playoff issues, and I don't think their defense is fixed. And I don't think that this recipe that has the Broncos winning all these games in a row is going to get them to the Super Bowl. And, the New England Patriots just got here. Like Drake May's in year 2, and the guy's going to take his team to a Super Bowl. So I'm kind of in that same mode too. That's why the Buffalo Bills to me are the comfort food. It's like, well, I can go to Buffalo and I could say, yeah, they're not what they were, but I've seen it. I've seen the core of this team do things in the playoffs. It's Josh Allen. He's the best quarter. This is what you can't deny. You could say what you will about the rest of the team around him. Josh Allen is the best quarterback in this AFC playoff field right now. But we're going through the process of elimination here. Well, it can't be that team. I can't take Jacksonville seriously. Okay, they're gone. So now we're down to 6. Buffalo's not what they once were. So now we're down to 5. And I think that's but part of the season has done that. Like, one of my least favorite sayings about sports is a win is a win is a win. No, it's not. Style points matter. How you win matters. Okay, and that's been the whole crux of the Denver Broncos. No one is that impressed by how the Broncos are winning games. They're shocked at how they're winning games. They're entertained by these fourth quarters, but they're not overly impressed. And they think that there's some level of fraudulence to all of this. Now, I have said I've moved beyond that. I think this is how they win. I think they've got it down to a science. And I think you have to give them credit for being able to repeat this over and over and over again. But I understand if people from the outside are looking in and catching the Broncos once every 3 weeks and like, this is the team that's battling for the best in the AFC. I get it. But one thing that we've kind of gone to, and there's another text on this point, the debate about who has good wins, like the college football playoff rankings just came out. And this is a big discussion, the college football playoff rankings, right? Because they go on who you beat and how many losses you have and all of this kind of stuff that gets into it. And maybe we should do it with it. You know what? I'm going to do that tonight. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch the Avs, and I'm also going to try to seed the NFL playoffs based on what I have heard the college football playoffs criteria is, and see if it matchups with what the actual seedings are right now. But we're discussing, who has good wins. Somebody texted in earlier, well, I can't really buy into the Patriots. Their best win is Buffalo, and I don't think that's even that great of a win. And then we got into, okay, well, then what would that be for the Broncos? And I think the Eagles are a better win than probably Buffalo is at this point. But then here's a text coming in from the 719. The Eagles aren't nearly as close to what they were last year. The Eagles win isn't that great. Does anybody have good wins? And it's a rhetorical question. Nobody does. You know why? Because the same conversation we're having about not truly believing in any one of these teams, they're playing each other. Right? This parody, this chaos, this mediocrity, if you want to be kind of mean about it, the fact that there are no great teams, well, it's counting against the belief with all these teams. Broncos beat Philadelphia and Philadelphia. That's not as good of a win this year. They beat Kansas City at home. That's not really as good of a win this year. Kansas City's not that good. New England beat Buffalo. Yeah, but they're not the Bills. The teams that are beating Baltimore. Yeah, but Baltimore's not really. Baltimore's starting to win some games. Yeah, but look at who they're playing. It's like this vicious cycle playing into itself over and over again. All of a sudden, look at the Broncos' wins or their losses. That it's like, who knows the way things are going. The Colts' loss might be a horrific loss for the Denver Broncos. That might be a loss to a team that's not even in the postseason. And conversely, I know they didn't have C.J. Stroud, which makes a difference in terms of perception. But, man, look at the Houston Texans go now. That's got to make that Broncos win. Look at Dallas. Look at what Denver did to Dallas. And all of a sudden, Dallas is being discussed as potentially winning the NFC East. Like, part of the reason, if it is who have they beaten, that is a big criteria for you. Well, the problem is all of these teams are largely unremarkable, and they're playing each other. So all the wins from these teams that you're going, yeah, I don't really know that, but buy into them. Who have they beaten? Well, they've beaten these other unremarkable teams. Brady's Patriots do not exist in today's NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs are on the outside of the playoffs looking in. Like, nobody's picking up a key win because none of these teams are great. And you're saying, well, I can't buy into New England because they've only beaten Buffalo and they're not that good. Well, who out there, who would be the team that Denver or Buffalo or any of these teams would beat that you would be impressed by? I think you have to ask yourself that question. I still think beating Kansas City at home is a good win. For Denver, for Dallas, I think it is. I think that's still a good win. I think now, is it as good of a win as beating last year's Kansas City team or 2 years ago Kansas City team? No. But for this year, in this iteration of the National Football League, beating the Chiefs is still a good win. Going to Philadelphia and beating the Eagles is a good win. Beating the Buffalo Bills is a good win. And for the teams that have beaten Denver or have beaten New England, those are good wins. But I just find it funny, and I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but like, nobody is going to have any great wins because there are no great teams in the NFL. It's like, right now, I know no one believes in the Chargers for other reasons, but the Chargers, look at who they've beaten. The Chargers might have the best resume in the NFL with some of the teams they've beaten. I'll run it through that college football playoff lens, and I hope to accomplish 2 goals. One, just to satisfy my own morbid curiosity on what if we adopted the college football playoffs rules for seeding teams and see where that gets us. But also, too, to point out the continued idiocy of, and they want to expand it. They can't get it right now, and they want to expand it. They want to, and that was kind of the thought, wasn't it? Oh, we go from 4 to 12. We won't have these problems. Like 4 teams, chances are there's going to be a good team. Florida State left out. But it's like, once we get to 12, it'd be nope. Now people are fighting each other over the fact that Notre Dame's higher than Miami. And the fact that Miami beat Notre Dame means nothing, but yet the college football playoff people keep talking about the quality of wins. Miami has one of the best wins of any team in America. They beat Notre Dame, who's a top 10 team. But Miami's not better than Notre Dame. By the way, here's the big headline that you're going to hear tonight and into tomorrow. Ole Miss moved up. Ole Miss, without Lane Kiffin, moved up in the college football playoff rankings. Florida State Seminole fans are fuming, because what they have been saying all week is, look, if we were left out of the college football playoff, and there's a flaw in their thinking because, again, this is a larger field than just the 4 teams that it was when Florida State was on the outside looking in. But their reasoning is, if you can really detract from a team that has accomplished all of this, that has amassed this resume, if you can take that all away because of a key component to their team missing, well, you should apply the same logic to Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a great season, had a great resume. Of course they should be ranked in the college football playoff. But you better move them down. They lost Lane Kiffin. Nope. Ole Miss is higher in the college football playoff than they were a week ago. Oh, I can't wait for Mr. 6'7". What's that guy's name that runs the committee now? That's 6'7". 6'7". Like, oh my God. Nothing will get me to take you less seriously as the head of a very important organization than you making a 6'7" joke. They've expanded it, and it's just, they have no idea. Their formula is no more scientific than the one you and I use today to argue over Patriots, Broncos, Buffalo. No more scientific. We're all just going on our opinions, putting weight behind the things that we value the most. There's no consensus here. There's no consensus on which team in the AFC is the best. And there's also no consensus on how we determine, which for you and I, it's fine. That's what sports talk radio is. It's subjective. It's you bring to the table whatever biases you want to bring to the table. And you shout them loud and proud. But the College Football Playoff Committee is supposed to have this thing down to a science. There's criteria that's supposed to mean, and past history is supposed to mean something. Nope. All goes out the window. I'll just tell you this, in case you had any doubt, they have no idea what they are doing. None. You, me, and a few of your buddies can sit in that room and have just as good of a ranking system as they have. Just as good. Now, there's not anybody that is egregiously high or egregiously low. We're going to debate the Miami Notre Dame thing. I think that's a valid argument. Shouldn't Miami, who's now 2 spots below Notre Dame, isn't it time for them to be above Notre Dame if they're that close? Should head-to-head not break that tie and put Miami over Notre Dame? And as far as the Ole Miss thing, absolutely not having Lane Kiffin should mean something. I'm not saying get Ole Miss out of the college football playoff. I don't think anybody is being that ridiculous. But you're going to elevate Ole Miss? You're going to take Ole Miss, who lost Lane Kiffin, and say they're better? How can you argue that? Nobody's saying Ole Miss needs to be kicked out of the college football playoff. I'm not even saying that Ole Miss needs to drop that far. Because ultimately, going back to the FSU thing, I would say that Jordan Travis was much more important to the success of the Florida State Seminoles than Mike Norvell was. So I understood the argument to leave Florida State out of it. But let's apply it to Ole Miss. Yeah, their players are still playing right? And they mean more than Lane Kiffin. But to say Lane Kiffin means nothing, it's almost like they said that Lane Kiffin was a burden on Ole Miss. Oh, Ole Miss was good, but without Lane Kiffin, man, watch them fly. We're really making the case that Lane Kiffin was somehow a burden, somehow was holding back or holding down Ole Miss, and now that he's off to LSU, and Charlie Weiss's kid is going to be he's grown man, but Charlie Weiss's son is going to be leading Ole Miss. Now we're going to elevate them. I think here's what it is with the college football playoff. And I'll admit, like, there are people that are much deeper into the world of college football than I am. Okay, so there are people that know better than I do. That's the only sport, by the way. Every other sport on planet Earth, badminton, football, tiddlywinks, doesn't matter. I am the foremost expert, and you know that. That's why you tune into the show every day. But in college football, there are people that watch more of the games than I do, and all this, kind of stuff. But they don't have it down to a science. They don't, and that's my problem. If they present themselves as a group of, and this is why I've always pushed, and look, it comes off a little self-serving, not that I'll ever be a part of this committee, but as a media member, it does come across as a little bit biased that I'm like, oh, we should have media members. But I know people who cover college football. I think they're super bright. And I think a lot of them would actually hold the team that they cover to a higher standard. There are certainly people out there in the media. Who's that guy that's been calling Lane Kiffin not nice things? Like, I feel like that guy would rank Ole Miss appropriately. I don't have a problem with this being the way to put together the college football playoff field. I don't have a problem with it. But when you present yourself as we know, we got it down to a science. We are the best and the brightest. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because any group of people who follow college football could come up with just as good of a ranking as they did. So that's the problem I have. If you're just people that are in college football and that you want to discuss it as so-called experts and come up with a completely subjective ranking system that's fine. But my point is, don't go on television and present yourself as like you're handing these down from the mountaintop, like better than all of us, because every single week we look at these rankings and we say, I could do just as good of a job. I think that's my problem with the College Football Playoff Committee, is that they present themselves as knowing better than us, and they don't. So let's just call it what it is. Some people that have a certain level of power in college football, and that gives them benefits like being on this committee, and they are coming up with their own thing, just like you and I did all day today with the AFC. Talk more about that coming up tomorrow. Appreciate your patronage and your interaction. Really great conversation today. As I learned when I was young, you can't have a conversation with just one person. So the reason why it was good conversation is because of you. So I appreciate that. Coming up, the Frank Serratori Show, to be immediately followed by Avs and Canucks. Val is back. Talk to you tomorrow.